And I'm Miss Cecilia.
And today we're going to discuss chemical naming and formula writing. Okay, before we start, let us define what is compound. Chemical compounds are formed when elements bond together. So basically, these are just combination of two or more elements.
What is the difference between ionic and covalent compound? The difference between ionic and covalent compounds is that ionic compounds are composed of metal and a non-metal, while a covalent compound is composed of both non-metal. In a ionic compound, there is a transfer of electrons, wherein a cation loses an electron while the anion gains an electron. While in covalent compound, there is a sharing of electrons.
How to name a compound? In naming ionic compound, particularly binary ionic compound, we just have to use the name of the cation and the name of the anion with suffix IDE. First example, we have BaCl2. Following the format in naming it, so we have Ba as barium and Cl as chlorine. And then, name of the cation is barium and then ion is chlorine plus suffix IDE, we have barium chloride. Okay, so let us determine the name of the following compounds. So here is the process on how to name binary compounds. Binary compounds are composed of two elements wherein it is metal plus non-metal because we have ionic compound. In ionic compound, the metal is the cation and then the non-metal is the anion. In naming them, we just have to use the name of the cation plus the name of the anion with suffix IDE. Example, we have NaF. This compound came from the cation sodium, Na ion, and chlorine ion. Okay? For you to be able to know their charges, you just have to look at your periodic table. It is written there. And then, so Na is sodium. And then F is chlorine. Combining them and following the format in naming the binary ionic compound, we will have sodium chloride. Okay. From chlorine, it becomes chloride because we have to put the suffix IE. Next example, we have MgO. MgO came from the cation magnesium or Mg positive 2 and then oxide ion or oxygen negative 2. Okay? So Mg positive 2 is named magnesium ion. And then oxygen negative 2. Combining them, we will have magnesium oxide because oxygen have the suffix I. Okay, so now I want you to try these examples. So you have to name AlF3, K2S, Ca3P2, Al2O3, and just follow this format. You just have to know the name of the cation and then their charge, and the name of an ion, and then put suffix IDE. Okay? Okay, let's check if your answers are correct. First, we have AlF3. The correct answer is aluminum fluoride. Did you get it right? Okay. Next, we have K2S. So it is named as potassium sulfide. Third, we have Ca3P2, which is named as calcium phosphide. And then last, we have Al2O3. It is named as aluminum fluoride. Okay, I hope that you understand or know how to name binary ionic compound. Okay, let's proceed with naming binary ionic compounds with transition methods.
Next, we have naming ionic compound with transition metals. So here we have the table for the stock name or the classical name for these transition metals. In naming them, we need to use stock name or classical name plus name of the anion with the suffix IDE.
So these are the transition metals. So it is found on the group B. As you can see, these are the elements with 2 or more charges. Example, Mn or manganese, positive 2, 3, 4, or 7.
This is how you name binary ionic compounds with transition metals. Okay, so as you can see, you can use stock name or classical name plus the name of an ion with the suffix IDE. Okay? So for example, we have FeO. So ngayon, papangalanan natin kung ano ba itong compound na to. So syempre, kailangan pa rin po natin i-consider dito yung charge numbers of each ion na meron tayo sa isang compound. For example, we have FeO. So ngayon, kailangan natin siyang pangalanan. Alright, so to name this compound, we have to consider once again the charge number. So sa transition metals, kailangan yung tignan sa periodic table of elements yung charges niya. So, itong si Fe or si iron, meron siyang charges na Fe2 plus or Fe3 plus. Pwede rin siya magbaliktad. Pwede nyo gawing Fe plus 2 or Fe plus 3. The same lang din po yung ibig sabihin niyan. Okay, so ngayon, para malaman natin, kailangan natin alamin ang charge number ni oxygen, which is once again, makikita nyo po sa periodic table of elements. So makikita nyo doon, ang charge niya ay 2 minus or 2 negative. Okay? So ngayon, kung titignan nyo, i-analyze nyo yung mismong compound na natin, kung mapapansin nyo, wala siyang subscript. Okay? So pwede natin masabi na ang subscript nila ay parehas. Dahil kung babalikan po natin sa criss-cross rule, kailangan natin ng simplified na formula for a compound. So therefore, okay, nanggaling siya sa Fe2O2. Then once again, i-follow nyo yung criss-cross rule, makukuha nyo ang formula na FeO. Okay? So ngayon, alam na natin kung saan sila nagmula. Okay? So ngayon, pwede na natin siyang pangalanan. So it's either once again, gagamit ka ng stock name or ng classical name ng transition metal. So in this case, ang transition metal na meron tayo ay iron or Fe. So ngayon, gamitin muna natin yung stock name. So anong stock name ang gagamitin natin? So we have iron. Ano ang kanyang charge? Okay? Iron, open and close parenthesis, Roman numeral number 2, and then yung name ng an ion with the suffix IDE. So since oxygen to, ilalagay natin dito ay oxide. Okay? So therefore, once again, ang final answer natin, ang name ng compound na yan ay iron 2 oxide for its stock name. So kanina, pinakita namin sa table kung ano-ano yung classical name of different transition metals. So therefore, titignan nyo lang din po kung ano ang classical name for iron 2. Ano nga ba ulit yun? Alright, very good. So, ferrous ang name ng iron 2. And then, sundan nyo na lang ng name of an ion, which is oxide. So once again, ito yung tinatawag natin na classical name. Classical name for iron 2 oxide, which is ferrous oxide. So next example naman, we have Fe2O3. So same process ng nauna. So alamin natin muna kung ano yung mga ions na meron tayo dito sa binary ionic compound. So first, we have iron. So once again, ano nga ba yung charges na meron siya? Okay, so we have Fe2 plus or Fe3 plus. Saan ulit makikita ang charges na yan? Yes, makikita niyo po siya sa periodic table of elements. So next, ano naman ang charge ni oxygen? Okay, so we have negative charge, which is 2 minus. Once again, meron tayong positive and negative charge sa isang compound. So once again, i-analyze nyo nyo yung nabuo na compound, Fe2O3. Alin kaya sa dalawang to ang gagamitin natin? Is it yung 2 plus o yung 3 plus? Yes. So, ang gagamitin po natin dito is yung 3 plus. Once again, kapag kinriss-cross nyo yan, okay, yung charge number ng isang ion ay ang magiging subscript naman ng isang element sa isang compound. Okay? So, once again, pag pinagsama natin yan, okay, magiging ganito. Okay, once again, pinili natin ay ito, Fe3 plus, and then we have oxygen 2 minus, criss-cross. Okay? Ang kakalabasan po niyan ay Fe2O3. Okay? So, tugma ba sa meron tayong compound dito? Yes. Okay? So, once again, ano na ang gagamitin natin? We have iron 3 plus. So, ngayon, alam na natin ang name. So, first muna, okay, yung stock name. So, once again, for stock name, so we have the name of the element, which is iron, and then we're going to use Roman numeral numbers, which is, yan, 3. Okay? And then, yung name ng an ion, which is oxide. Oxide. So, stock name of this compound is iron 3 oxide. Okay? So, next naman, for classical name. So, classical name, once again, titingnan nyo lang din ulit siya sa table na pinakita kanina sa naunang mga slides. So, ano ba ang name ng Fe or iron 3? Okay, so we have ferric. Okay. So, we have ferric. And then, once again, sundan nyo lang ng name of an ion with the suffix IDE, which is, in this case, we have oxygen or oxide. So, this is the classical name of this compound, ferric oxide.
Next that we have is naming ionic compounds with polyatomic ions. So these are the examples of how to name polyatomic ions. Okay, on the periodic table, we can see the polyatomic ions. So we have here the cations and then anions, and from there, we could be able to know their names. So example, we have here acetate. So, the formula for acetate is C2H3O2. Okay, let's determine the name of the following compounds with polyatomic ions.
Okay, so this is how you name ionic compounds with polyatomic ions. So, ionic compounds with polyatomic ions could have either of the three formats or combination. First combination that we have is polyatomic anion plus anion or the non-metal. Next, we have the cation plus polyatomic anion or the metal plus the polyatomic anion. And then, the third that we have is the combination of both polyatomic ions, which is the polyatomic anion plus the polyatomic anion. For example, we have here Na3PO4. So, based on the chemical formula, it is the combination of the cation or sodium plus the polyatomic anion phosphate. So the name is simply sodium phosphate. So for you to be able to know the name of the polyatomic ion, you just have to use the periodic table. So you can see it there. Okay, again, naming ionic compounds with polyatomic ions, you just have to use their name itself. But except for this one. Because for polyatomic anion plus anion, the name of the anion should also have the suffix I. Okay? For example, we have here NH42S. So NH4 is a polyatomic cation and S is an ion. So we have NH4 as ammonium and then S is sulfur. Okay? And then following the format, this anion will have suffix IE. So from ammonium plus sulfur, we have ammonium sulfide. So that is how you name NH4-S. So for both polyatomic ions, polyatomic anion and polyatomic anion, just have to use their name itself. So NH4, again, it is ammonium. And then PO4 is phosphate. So therefore, the name of this element or compound is ammonium phosphate. Okay, so now I want you to try these three chemical formulas. I want you to name it. So we have AgCN, Mg3PO4, and then FeOH. Alright, let's check if your answers are correct. So for Mg3PO42, it is named as magnesium phosphate. For AgCN, it is named as silver cyanide. And last, for Fe, open parenthesis OH, close parenthesis 3, we have iron 3 hydroxide or ferric hydroxide.
Alright, so next we have here name formula of ionic compounds. So once again, when we say ionic compounds, it is composed of a cation and an anion. So as a review, in writing chemical formulas, so we have these three steps. So first, we have know the symbol and charges, okay, of ions. Next, crisscross or the crisscross rule. And then third, you have to simplify always the chemical formula of a certain compound. So here we have an example, calcium phosphate. So once again, i-apply natin yung rules natin dito. So first, know the symbol and charges. So for calcium, the symbol for calcium is Ca. So next, alamin ang charge. Okay? Charge of calcium. So saan niyo siya makikita? Once again, sa periodic table of elements. So calcium, meron siyang charge na plus 2. Okay? Then next, we have an ion which is phosphate, a polyatomic ion. So next, anong symbol natin dyan? Okay, we have PO4. Next, what is the charge number of polyatomic anion? Okay, so once again, titingin lang po tayo sa periodic table of elements. Then makikita natin na meron siya minus 3 charge. Okay, so next, crisscross. A crisscross method or crisscross rule. Kung saan, once again, ang charge number ay ang magiging subscript noong isang ion sa buong compound. So crisscross. So we have calcium 3, PO4, then 2. So next, kung natatandaan niyo yung sa previous lesson, kapag polyatomic ions, kailangan naka-enclose siya sa parenthesis kapag 2 or more ang subscript. Therefore, ito PO4 na yan, i-enclose natin siya sa parenthesis since more than 1 ang kanyang subscript. Okay? So therefore, okay, ito na ang formula for calcium phosphate. We have Ca3, open parenthesis, PO4, and close parenthesis, 2. So, hindi na siya masisimplify dahil wala silang common denominator. Alright, next example, we have iron 2 oxide. So, ano nga ba itong name na to? Stock name or classical name? Yes, it is an example of stock name. Naming ng compound. So, iron 2 oxide, once again, follow lang natin yung steps. Pinakauna, alamin ang symbol ng bawat ion na meron tayo sa compound. So, first, we have iron. So, Fe. Next, what is the charge number of iron? So, dito, makikita na natin sa naka-enclose sa parenthesis na yan. We have 2 plus or plus 2 na charge. Okay? So, Fe plus 2. Next, we have oxide or oxygen. Okay? So, siya ba ay cation or anion? If ang sagot mo ay anion, yes, tama ka. So, anion, which is meron tayong negative charge. So, ano ang charge number ni oxygen sa parenthesis? So, ano ang charge number ni oxygen? We have minus 2 charge. Okay? So, ito na. Alam na natin ang symbol and charge number. Second step is yung crisscross rule na naman. Okay? Crisscross natin. Okay? So, Fe2O2. Okay? So, ito na yung second step. The next, okay, last step natin is kailangan na natin i-simplify ang chemical formula ng compound. So, palagay niyo nyo ba pwede natin ma-simplify ang Fe2O2? Yes, pwede pa natin siya ma-simplify since meron silang common denominator. So, divided by 2, ito mga subscript na yan, magiging FeO. Okay? Therefore, ang final answer natin for iron 2 oxide, chemical formula is FeO. Now, I want you to try this 3. Okay, so we have magnesium nitride, we have beryllium chloride, and last, potassium chloride. Alright, so let's check if your answers are correct. So first, magnesium nitride, we have magnesium plus 2, and then nitrogen minus 3. Okay, pag pinag-criss-cross, we have Mg3 and 2. Okay, so next, we have beryllium chloride. So, ions are beryllium plus 2 and then chloride, which is minus 1. And then crisscross, okay, you'll get BeCl2. Okay. Last, we have potassium chloride. Okay. The ions involved in this compound are potassium plus and then ClO3 minus. Okay. The final answer is KClO3.
Now let's proceed with naming covalent compound.
In naming covalent compounds, we use the Greek prefix, then the name of the first element, plus the Greek prefix, then the name of the second element, then the suffix IDE. The Greek prefix that you will use will be based on the number of atoms of each element in the compound. On the table, we have the prefixes that represents the number of atoms.
First example, we have N2O3. To determine its name, we just have to know the number of atoms of each element in the compound. For nitrogen, we have 2 and oxygen, we have 3. So we will use the prefixes that represents their number of atoms. So we have dinitrogen trioxide. So now let's try to answer this. You have to identify the name of the following covalent compounds. Take note that if the first element have no subscript or has an atom of 1, you don't have to put mono. Again, for the first element, you don't have to put mono.
Make sure to pause on this part.
Okay, let's check if your answers are correct. So for NO, we have nitrogen monoxide, NO2 nitrogen dioxide, N2O3 dinitrogen trioxide, N2O4 dinitrogen tetraoxide, N2O5 dinitrogen pentaoxide.
SF6 sulfur hexafluoride, IF7 iodine heptafluoride, and so on and so forth. For name to formula of a covalent compound, it is easy because the prefix denotes the number of atoms in a compound.
So that's why we have sulfur dioxide as SO2, dinitrogen monoxide as N2O, carbon tetrachloride as CCl4, and so on and so forth.